The cafe was nestled in the heart of an affluent neighborhood, its polished marble countertops and crystal chandeliers reflecting the elegance of the people who frequented it. It was a place where only the most refined came to sip their expertly brewed lattes, surrounded by quiet chatter and the soft hum of classical music. A symbol of luxury and calm, the cafe felt like an extension of the exclusive lives of its patrons, a sanctuary from the noise of the outside world. Amelia, a woman in her early 40s, sat near the window, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit that hugged her figure. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her demeanor as cold and composed as ever. She had built a reputation for being sharp, decisive, and unyielding, traits that had served her well in her career as a high-powered attorney. In this cafe, Amelia was a queen, enjoying her morning ritual of sipping coffee from a delicate porcelain cup, her thoughts already racing ahead to the busy day awaiting her. But as she took another sip, her tranquility was shattered by the sound of the cafe door creaking open. A man, ragged and disheveled, stepped inside. His clothes were torn, his hair unkempt, and his face was marked by days of neglect. He looked like he hadn't had a proper meal in weeks. Amelia's gaze shifted toward him, her lips tightening in irritation. She hated the intrusion. This cafe was her escape, her perfect haven, and the presence of someone like him threatened the peace she had so carefully cultivated. The man shuffled slowly into the cafe, his footsteps dragging as though the weight of the world was pressing down on him. His clothes were an unfortunate sight, worn-out jeans frayed at the edges, a threadbare jacket that had seen better days, and shoes that had long lost their purpose. His hair was wild and matted, a dark mess that hung around his face, and his stubbled chin only added to the roughness of his appearance. His eyes, however, told the most haunting story, bloodshot and tired. They seemed to carry an infinite sadness. It was the kind of exhaustion that went beyond physical weariness, as if life had beaten him down and left him empty. Amelia's gaze fixed on him immediately, her eyes narrowing with disdain. She couldn't believe that someone like him would even think to step into a place like this. His very presence felt out of place, disrupting the serene atmosphere that she had come to expect. As he walked up to the counter, she overheard him asking the barista for a simple drink, his voice soft and tentative, like he wasn't sure if he had the right to ask. The barista hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do, glancing nervously around at the other customers. Finally, he politely but firmly told the man that unfortunately, the cafe had a policy against serving those without proper attire. The beggar didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. He simply nodded, as if he had expected nothing more. He turned and walked to a corner of the cafe, quietly taking a seat at a table by the window, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Amelia watched him for a moment, a growing sense of disgust welling up inside her. This was unacceptable. A place like this should never be marred by the presence of someone like him. In a fit of frustration, she stood up, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She walked toward the barista and with a cold edge to her voice, insisted, "He shouldn't be here. This cafe should remain classy. Please, ask him to leave." The barista looked at her, unsure of how to respond, but the firm look in her eyes left no room for argument. The barista approached the beggar with visible hesitation, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to maintain his professionalism. He knelt down beside the man, his voice low and apologetic. "I'm really sorry, but we have a policy. You'll need to leave." The beggar looked up slowly, his eyes meeting the barista's for a moment. Then, without a word, he rose from his seat. He didn't fight back, didn't protest or argue. He simply nodded, a quiet acceptance in his movements. He turned away and began walking toward the door, his gait slow and deliberate, as if the weight of the world was pressing on him with every step. Amelia sat back in her seat, watching the scene unfold with a sense of satisfaction. She felt justified in her actions, like she had done the right thing. After all, this was a high-class establishment. There was no room for people like him here. Her eyes followed the beggar as he passed through the cafe, and she couldn't help but feel a small sense of triumph. He was leaving, just as he should have. She had made sure of it. As he reached the door, however, the beggar glanced toward her for a brief moment. His gaze was intense, and there was something in his eyes, something unreadable, that made Amelia pause for a second. His look lingered just long enough for her to feel an uncomfortable twist in her stomach, but she quickly dismissed it. It was nothing, just a tired man with nothing left to lose. He stepped out into the street, and Amelia took a long sip of her coffee, trying to regain her calm. A fleeting pang of guilt brushed against her conscience, but she quickly shrugged it off. She had done the right thing. Returning to her comfortable seat, she resumed her morning, her thoughts shifting back to her day ahead, her sense of superiority restored. That evening, Amelia attended the gala she had been eagerly anticipating for weeks. The event was one of the most prestigious of the year, a gathering where only the city's elite were invited. She could already feel the excitement bubbling inside her as she stepped into the grand ballroom. The lights glittered like diamonds, and the air was thick with the hum of high society, whispers of deals, praises and smiles that were as calculated as the outfits they adorned. Amelia's extravagant gown shimmered as she moved, the diamonds around her neck catching the light, making her feel like the queen of the night. She walked confidently through the entrance, where familiar faces greeted her, people who knew her by name, who respected her influence, smiled and waved as she made her way across the room. Among the crowd was her influential business partner, a man whose endorsement could take her career to new heights. Amelia basked in the attention, her sharp wit and poised demeanor drawing admiration from all sides. She felt invincible, as if the world was at her feet. The sound of clinking glasses and soft laughter filled the air, and Amelia couldn't help but smile, certain that this night would only add to her already perfect life. What she didn't know, however, was that the beggar from earlier was also at the gala, transformed in a way that would soon shake her to the core. Amelia was enjoying the night, her laughter ringing out as she mingled with her fellow guests. She felt the familiar rush of power and validation as the rich and influential surrounded her, discussing investments, upcoming projects, and other matters of high society. But then as she glanced across the room, something made her stop mid-conversation. There, standing near the far wall, was the beggar from earlier, her breath caught in her throat. The man who had been nothing but a ragged figure in the cafe was now transformed. Gone were the tattered clothes and unkempt hair. In their place was a sharp, tailored suit, the kind that whispered wealth. His dark eyes were confident, and he carried himself with the ease of someone completely at home in this luxurious setting. He wasn't alone either. A group of well-dressed people surrounded him, laughing and chatting as if he were just another respected figure in the crowd. Amelia's heart raced. She couldn't believe it. It couldn't be him. Her mind scrambled for an explanation, but nothing made sense. She had just seen him leave the cafe, defeated and broken. How could he possibly be here, in this world of wealth and sophistication? Before she even realized it, her feet had already moved toward him, drawn by an overwhelming curiosity and disbelief. The closer she got, the more unsettled she became, unsure if she was imagining things. When she finally reached him, she opened her mouth to speak, but he was already looking at her, a cold, almost knowing smile curving his lips. "Amelia," he said, his voice calm but edged with something sharp. "I see you remember me. How interesting." Her stomach tightened, her mind reeled. She tried to compose herself, laughing awkwardly, unsure whether to apologize or ignore the entire encounter. "I didn't expect to see you here. Are you playing some kind of joke on me?" She stammered, her confidence beginning to falter. The man's smile remained, but there was a hardness to it now. "I'm not joking, Amelia. You've already shown me who you are. Remember the cafe this morning? The way you treated me like I was nothing." Her face flushed with sudden embarrassment, her perfect composure began to crack. "I didn't mean to be rude, it was just," she faltered, but his gaze silenced her. He stepped closer, his eyes steady. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm a businessman," and that moment in the cafe was part of a test of character. "I've been observing people like you, trying to see what lies beneath the surface. And well, I think we both know how that turned out." Amelia's mind went blank, her pulse quickening. She couldn't process what he was saying. He had been testing her? Testing all of them? The calm and collected woman who had always prided herself on being in control now stood before him, unsure of how to respond. She had judged him, dismissed him so easily, and now she realized, with growing humiliation, that her arrogance had been on full display. The beggar-turned-businessman stood there, his gaze unwavering, as he watched Amelia's expression shift from confusion to realization. His smile faded, replaced by a serious, almost cold demeanor. "I've been observing people like you for months, Amelia," he said, his voice steady. I wanted to see who could look beyond the surface, who had kindness in their hearts, and who didn't. I knew there would be moments when people would make choices, moments where they would decide whether to show empathy or cruelty. Amelia's breath caught in her throat as he spoke. She tried to process his words, her mind racing. "You mean you were watching me, all this time?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man nodded. "Yes, the cafe wasn't a random encounter. It was part of my test. I wanted to see how people would treat me, whether they'd help, ignore, or outright reject me. You, Amelia, you were one of the first to show me exactly who you are." Her heart skipped a beat. She had failed the test. "You kicked me out," he continued, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You treated me as if I were nothing more than a nuisance. That wasn't just disappointing, it was cruel. You dismissed me with no thought, no second glance. You were too busy protecting your precious little world to see that I'm a person too." Amelia's mind reeled, her body stiffened, and for the first time that night, she felt vulnerable. She opened her mouth, wanting to apologize, to say anything that might make the situation right. But before she could speak, he cut her off, his tone sharp. "It's too late for apologies. The damage has been done." Her world seemed to tilt on its axis. The ground beneath her felt unstable, and for the first time, Amelia questioned everything she had ever believed in, everything that had once given her confidence. The man's words echoed in her mind, and she could feel the weight of her own actions pressing down on her, as if the walls around her were closing in. The businessman's gaze softened for a moment, but there was no warmth in it, only a cold, unwavering certainty. "You see, Amelia," he began, his voice even, "this test was only part of something much larger. I'm part of an organization that seeks to expose those who thrive on the misery of others, those who walk over the weak, who ignore the suffering around them, because they're too wrapped up in their own little world." Amelia's chest tightened, and she felt a cold wave of dread wash over her. She had never imagined this would be anything more than an isolated incident, but now it seemed as though she had become entangled in something far beyond her understanding. The perfect controlled life she had so carefully built suddenly felt like a house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. He continued, his words cutting deeper than she could have anticipated. "I had planned to help you, Amelia. I had planned to use my resources to elevate you further in your career, give you opportunities that most people could only dream of. I thought you had potential, but your actions at that cafe, that's cost you everything. That was the moment you showed me who you really are, and now you've lost that chance." She stood there, speechless, her mind spinning. This man, this stranger, had been ready to help her rise higher than she could have ever imagined, but her cruelty, her dismissiveness had ruined it all. He turned to walk away, his steps slow and deliberate, each one a reminder of how much she had lost. "I won't be offering you anything now, but there are others who have passed my test with grace and kindness. They'll rise. You, however, will stay where you are." Amelia's breath hitched as she watched him disappear into the crowd. His words echoed in her ears, and she felt a deep, gnawing emptiness in her chest. The world around her seemed to spin, and for the first time in years, she felt utterly lost. The powerful woman, who had once controlled every aspect of her life, now felt small and insignificant, and in that moment, she realized how fragile her world had truly been. As the man disappeared into the crowd, Amelia stood frozen, her heart heavy with the weight of everything that had just unfolded. The grand ballroom, once filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, now felt eerily silent to her. The glittering chandeliers above seemed dimmer, the music distant, as if the world around her had lost its luster. The people she had once considered her peers, the ones who had shared in her success and admiration, now seemed distant. Their smiles, once so familiar and reassuring, now felt hollow, fake even. They were merely shadows of the truth that the beggar had forced her to face. She had spent her entire life chasing status, wealth, and influence, but in that moment, she realized that none of it meant anything if she couldn't connect with others on a real human level. The night wore on, but Amelia couldn't bring herself to enjoy it. A deep sense of loss crept in, slowly taking root. She wondered, in the quiet recesses of her mind, if she could ever change, if she could ever redeem herself, or was it too late? As the guests continued to revel in the gala, Amelia stood apart, her gaze drifting to the far wall. She felt the full weight of her choices, her mistakes pressing down on her. With no answers in sight, she stood there, uncertain of where to go from here, but knowing she had to begin somewhere. Thank you for watching this story unfold. It's a powerful reminder that kindness, empathy, and the way we treat others are far more important than wealth or status. Sometimes the most important lessons come when we least expect them, and this story shows how our actions can have lasting consequences. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with others. Your support helps us continue bringing you more powerful stories. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to stay updated with our latest videos. We love hearing your thoughts, so feel free to share what you learned or felt about the story in the comments below. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and we hope to see you in the next video.